I grew up in an amazing family. On the one side, it was my grandmother, Teresa, her 3 sisters. They grew up in the Sarah Fisher Orphanage until they were brought in and cared for by a family that throughout their lives had somewhere around 45-ish foster children. And so looking back, I remember every family gathering that I was at, there was always somebody at the table that was not blood related. And so when I met Amanda Jane Talmadge, it was so second nature to me that I didn't even flinch when stepping into spaces where her family looked so different.
Yeah, there was my Aunt Cherry and her husband, Uncle Chuck, not blood related. My Aunt Sally and her daughter Sarah, and now her whole family, not blood related. And then Mercy and Isaiah Mafu, this couple from South Africa that my aunt met and brought them back to the United States for 11 years, where they had 2 kids, Dumi and Zomusa. Those were my cousins. To me, to have a family that just kept adding other people, it was completely normal. Not long after we got married, when we had 2 biological and the 3rd on the way, I was 6 months pregnant with Lucy when we got Markeisha and Isaiah. I remember the day that we told the kids that
they were being adopted.
And Liam, he went over to Markeisha and asked, Markeisha, do you want to be a part of our forever family? And her response was, it's like ingrained in our heads, because at first she got really excited and like jumped up and down, and Isaiah just started jumping up and down too because he didn't know what was going on. He was so confused. And then she got real still and went and sat in the corner. And she just kind of like put her head in her hands and was going, will you still be my parents when I'm 18? Will you still be my parents when I'm 30? Will you walk me down the aisle? And we're like, yes, when you're old, like we're not going anywhere. And then she asked,
I remember.
She asked, whose idea was this? Whose head was this in first?
Now, I remember we answered her real clearly. We were like, this was Jesus. This has always been the heart of Jesus. This is Ephesians 1, where it says God has predestined us for sonship and daughtership through and in Jesus. We were able to look at her and go, you were always created to belong. And I think that's been the story of so much of our lives and our ministry. Looking back is just going, we want to do everything we can to create space at the table, to widen the family boundaries, and to give every human a home, because this is Jesus' plan. And we mean this literally. Every human needs a home, and we mean this spiritually. Every human is meant to belong. And that's the work that hundreds of us now have put our hands to over the past 10 years here in New York City.
Roosevelt Island has become a hub for internationals. Often, though, it's hard for people to really make a home where they find themselves because there's so much pulling for their attention and their energy. And it's even harder for them to be able to make a home for someone else because they're living so transiently. That's why people like Penelope are so beautiful and encouraging to us.
My work is a diplomat. I am representing my country, South Africa, at the United Nations. So just this morning, I was recounting how many visitors I've actually had. It's come to 19. It's made me appreciate the presence of others from home. And I think it's been a healing journey for me. Mosaic has been very instrumental in the healing journey of relational wounds for me and allowing people back into my space. I was able to open up my home for us to meet with the young adults. If God could entrust that type of stewardship over me, then I could continue it in other ways. And it taught me to be marked by generosity. That's essentially what we teach at Mosaic, that we should be a people marked by generosity.
Ministry is lonely. Church planting and starting new churches might even be lonelier than that. And then on top of it, you try to think through the process and the uphill battle that women who are leading as point leaders, or the global majority, people of color are leading. And it just is a lonely road. And so the Mosaic Collective has come into existence to help resource both women and leaders of color in church planting. Not just because we think it's the just thing to do, but because we want justice-oriented, Jesus-centered churches across a country that is going to be largely non-white in years to come. This is why we're so thankful to watch and witness people like Faith and Dave.
So we started our church planting journey in February 2020, and it turned out that was the worst time that one could imagine starting a church planting journey. And we went through so many layers of isolation.
All we had was really a prayer and the sense of call to follow God and start this church here in northern New Jersey. But the biggest worries were a lot of the resources and the relationships, and not having any of that was terrifying. And through a miraculous set of circumstances, God sent people to us that really were willing to partner with us. And we never had people like that in our lives.
I mean, I think the gift of our whole church planting journey with Mosaic Collective was a biblical picture of unity, where we're not gathering people that just like each other and are like each other, but actually it's people that are so different but are united by one thing, which is Jesus.
And so we're so grateful for the family that we found in the Mosaic Collective, because we wouldn't be here without the collective.
As we've sought to be a justice-oriented church, a lot of that is looking at what God is doing and what is happening in our neighborhoods. Currently, we are seeing 500 new migrants move to New York City on a daily basis. These are real people made in the image of God, people who need a home.
And we tell ourselves wild narratives about those that are living on the street or those that are migrant neighbors. And so part of Mosaic's work has been to create more empathetic narratives. The Mosaic Community Center is a big piece of this, where we get to bring our neighbors into close relationship with under-resourced neighbors so that they can see the fuller and better story of who these image bearers actually are and the struggles that they're going through, so that they can see that quite literally we have neighbors who need a home.
So as we look back at 10 years of ministry here in New York City, there has been this theme that I think God has continued to put in our hearts and extend out through us, that everyone needs to belong. Everyone needs a home. It's what has driven us and is continuing to take us into the next season. Every human, a home.